Hello everyone. In this class, I'm going to talk about the market situation of submarine cables from the following perspectives. 1. Market history and development trends. 2. Industry characteristics. First, let's take a brief look at the history of the submarine cable industry. The first submarine cables were fairly different to the submarine optical cables that we talk about nowadays. Initially, submarine cables transmitted telegraph signals, rather than optical signals. The earliest telegraph cables were put into use between 1840 and 1850, and were used to just cross a river or a bay over a very short distance. In 1858, the first transatlantic submarine telegraph system was built, but it worked for only 26 days. Nevertheless, people didn't abandon the pursuit of oceanic communication. In 1866, another transatlantic submarine cable system was laid. These first submarine cables appeared more than 100 years earlier than optical fibers. By 1956, the first transatlantic telephone system was put into place. Only by then did submarine cables leave the telegraph era and enter the telephone era. In the 1980s, the submarine cable made another major move from the telephone era to the optical era. In 1988, the first transatlantic optical fiber system was established. By the end of the 20th century, the DWDM technology was developed, and the submarine optical cable system entered the DWDM era. We can see from these pictures that in the early days the submarine cable system was very simple, and so were the submarine cable engineering ships. However, over the past 100 years, the submarine cable industry has greatly matured. Today, global interconnection and interworking have been improved vastly. According to the statistics, the global international bandwidth increased by fivefold from 2011 to 2015, and the growth is set to increase by another 35% every year over the next few years. There are more and more countries with submarine optic cable connections. In 1990, more than 200 countries lacked submarine cable connections. By 2015, this number had decreased to just 50. Considering that there are more than 40 inland countries around the world, we can conclude that almost all coastal countries have submarine cable connections. Submarine optic cables have made great progress in terms of both the width and depth of coverage over the past few decades. Today, the driver of growth in the submarine cable market has shifted from sending telegraphs to making phone calls, to surfing the internet, and to DC-based communications. Many global IT companies, such as Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft, have established their own data centers around the world. The interconnection of these data centers is the driving force behind the huge growth in the international bandwidth of submarine optical cables. According to the current distribution of international communication bandwidth connections are concentrated in the major hubs around the world, including North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. These three hubs constitute the main root centers of the current global communication connection. Connections in other areas are relatively weaker, but the trend towards these is strengthening over time. The connections between the three main hubs are long-distance and transoceanic connections, such as Trans-Pacific, Transatlantic, and Trans-Indian Ocean connections. Long-distance connections account for the largest proportion of investment. In addition, there are also regional connections. For example, coverage from the U.S. to Latin American and Pacific Islands, coverage from the Asia Pacific to Australia, Southeast Asia, and the Indian Ocean, and coverage from Europe to Africa. The distances between these regional connections are relatively short, generally 3,000 kilometers to 7,000 kilometers. These are categorized in the second type of market, marked in red in the table to the right. The third type of market includes connections between small islands, marked in yellow. According to industry trends, capacity requirements on the submarine cable systems connected to backbone nodes will continue to increase. In addition, regional connections have also introduced greater coverage requirements. In this way, global submarine cable connections will gradually migrate to a balanced state. This is the leading development trend of submarine cable construction in the future.